to start this one with my nose because my hands are covered and occupied. I don't know if my Miss Piggy is the best, but it's hard. I could have gone more character study in depth, Miss Piggy, but I thought the lip bench and the paparazzi was very good for moi. For moi? Moi? It's a hard one. It's sort of a combination between Kermit the Frog, whom I wore, as far as I'm concerned. It's so hard. What is Miss Piggy? She's sort of like, I am Miss Piggy. I am... Okay, it's harder than I thought. For moi, I am Miss Piggy. I am talking like this. I guess she has to go up more in her higher register. Kermit, do you love me? I'm still Team Kermit the Frog. We should have never broken up in the first place, Kermit. Okay, that's all the Miss Piggy you're gonna get out of me. It's a hard one. It's a hard one for moi. For moi. I would have to do my character study more accurately. I just want to be with Kermit. I would have to do my character study more. So, sorry I didn't go full bore. I could not find a pig nose or ears. I apologize. Terrible actor here. I'm just feeling like I'm failing you all. But really, I think I pulled it off pretty nicely. So, there was my motivation. This is a gift for someone who's not responded to me in months, so we'll see if they get it. But it was a gift for them. Among a few other gifts I have for them. Life is funny like that sometimes. So this was my inspiration for my beautiful face, which I busted back out the powder puff because a lady always needs her powder puff. I think that's what she sounds like. And she would absolutely carry a bra purse. A purse with a sassy bra upon it. Miss Piggy would love this purse. Oh, everything's attached to everything. Hold it. Yeah. Miss Piggy would delight to use this purse. This would absolutely be the one for her. Oh, it's dusty. That won't do for a lady. This purse has an interactive phone, and I think this is the one she would love. So she can call Kermit. Kermit, take me back. I think I'm getting the knack of it, maybe. For moi. Get on there, do your little thing. Come on. Things that are only meant to do one thing, I swear. It's like you're only made to do one thing. There. I did it. I am a genius. Okay, so enough of those shenanigans. We're gonna dive in. This is a short story I wrote. I'm sorry. I'm very pleased with my look here. This is a short story I wrote, and you'll see how Miss Piggy ties into it. But it's a weird one, and I actually ended up exiting this writing group that I was in at the peak of the pandemic, which I'm still really sad about. And perhaps I will tell you the story one day and read a piece that sort of led to my leaving the writing group. But maybe I won't share it. I don't know. I feel called to share it, but at the same time, it's like still very painful to me and continues to really bother me that this incident even went down. Like it really, really eats at my guts. At my guts, my delicious guts. But when I was in this writing group, I felt very much like I belonged and like I had some purpose, and I was actually starting and finishing writing pieces, which I'm used to just kind of like bailing on myself or starting something and then getting too afraid of it and stashing it away somewhere. So I was really proud of myself. I was finishing things. And then this terrible, geez, opportunity for learning and conversation that just turned into rah, 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 and anger and finger pointing and judgment pushed me out of it. So that's the short version of what happened. Not because of this piece. Anyway, sort of traumatic for me, sort of a really sad, awful thing that happened that I wish I could go in a time machine and make different. But, you know, things happen. Pigs break up with frogs. Frogs fall out of the sky. Crazy shit happens every day. We can't ask why. So, or we can, but we won't get any answers. But I was proud of this piece, and it was like when we did the weekly or bi-weekly contributions, there would be these prompts, right? So the kind of leader of the group would prompt us in these specific ways, and I can't remember all of the prompts for this one. I know that it had to have, I believe, it had to have a cab or some sort of like getting a ride somewhere, and there had to be masks. And and a revelation. There had to be a revelation of some kind, and then I think I'm maybe forgetting one more. So it had to be masks, had to be revelation, had to be getting a ride somewhere. So I wrote this, and I'm proud of it. Oh, and another little backstory on this one. The main character of this very strange story, which is kind of autobiographical only in the sense of like the sort of commune that I would like to start, and people often just call communes cults, so I guess it would be a cult. But I did my poem about the sacred temple of reverent sensuality, and sacred temple of reverent sensuality, right? Gotta get my acronyms right from my brain. There's so many of them. But yeah, this is an offshoot of that, kind of, sort of. There's twists and turns. But yeah, a little telling of parts of my own brain. Certainly nothing that I've actually lived through, but it's kind of fever dreamish and kind of crazy and all over the place, but I enjoy it. And the other part of the backstory is, and maybe I've told this one, I don't think so though, I always wanted to meet someone named Taffy, and when I was working at this restaurant, I told the dishwasher one day, just so randomly, I've always wanted to meet a Taffy. And the next day I was applying for indigent care, like help for finances at the hospital, and my financial advisor's name was Taffy. And I looked at her name tag and was like, no, come on. I just told my coworker yesterday that I've been waiting my whole life to meet a Taffy, and you aren't that Taffy. This is crazy. So that was a good moment for me. So here's the story. It's kind of long. We'll get into it. If you're a real fan, you'll make it through the whole thing. Here it comes. It's called The Night Taffy Fell in Love with Richard Nixon, Saw God, and Willfully Joined a Cult. Taffy could not believe it had come to this. She scanned the room and her own internal intentions for signs that this was not a catastrophic and embarrassing mistake. The only thing that kept her in the magenta and purple lit room abuzz with the sounds of strangely outdated jazzy conga music, like that scene in Breakfast at Tiffany's when everyone is at the weird party and the cat is climbing on the cabinets and the Asian neighbor, very bizarrely played by Mickey Rooney, is all mad and breaks his cup, and everybody's doing very artfully odd drunk things, and Holly Golightly yells, "Timber!" and the lady falls like a tree. You know the scene. Was the fact that her typically unusual heartbeat had shifted to an almost normal human rhythm for some reason. Taffy had run the gambit of bizarre health diagnoses since she was a child. When she was very young, she was diagnosed with Alice in Wonderland syndrome. Yes, it's a real thing. Yes, it was terrible for her. The disorder, also commonly called Todd syndrome, caused excruciating migraines, typically right before or right after sleep, which led to hallucinations of perception, whereupon people and objects seem disproportionately massive or tiny. Sort of like in Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, where Joel thinks he's little and Clementine seems huge and the sink seems even bigger, but weirder than that even. With a lot of therapy, these unfortunate visualizations all but disappeared, but throughout her life there was also several incidents of kidney stones, light sensitivity, a near drowning bathtub incident which led to severe thalassophobia, and an electrolyte deficiency which caused her heart sometimes to go fluttering. She came to use her heart arrhythmia as a sort of compass in social situations, and though it surprised her greatly, tonight it told her to stay put and stick this one out. Her best friend Cherry had told her about the no real faces allowed speed dating extravaganza, and Taffy was just reaching that desperate point in her loneliness, kind of like that crazy movie Repulsion where Catherine Deneuve hears the alarm, but she's tripping out and so alone, and shadows are consuming her, and she scribbles some undecipherable nonsense on the windows, and she's wandering around, and these arms pop out of the hallways, but they're like in her mind, clawing at her, but it's just a mental representation of her isolation, where even the most outlandish approaches seemed worth a shot. She trusted Cherry and truly believed she had some sort of extrasensory perception skills. Taffy and Cherry bonded in ninth grade over their humorous and bully magnetizing names. Their joint status at the bottom of the popularity chain shifted when Derek Saunders, the almighty quarterback, called Cherry a skank, to which she responded by ripping his nipple off with her bare hands. Yes, all the way off. From that point on, after Cherry was placed on a 72-hour psych hold, of course, no one really fucked with the duo. Once, Cherry told Taffy not to go on a date with this guy Freddie, and he got in a terrible car accident with another girl in the front seat that very night. They didn't die, but it was pretty bad. Cherry also saved Taffy from her creepy stepdad on multiple occasions, and once put laxatives in his beer. She was a good friend. So Taffy rolled with this idea, strange as it seemed. Scanning the room was a rather trippy scene. The idea was interesting enough, but the actual experience of it and build-up was rather frightening. A bit like that part of Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas where the bar patrons morph into reptiles in an orgiastic free-for-all, and they're all just kind of going at it on the floor, and everything is sticky and sinister, and the lighting becomes as punishing as the gnashing teeth of the beasts, but more tame and awkward, of course, but similar in a vibes way. The more she scanned the room, the more humorous the scene really was. There was a quite curvy gal in one of those rubber unicorn masks, and she kept bending the straw of her drink trying to get it into the hole of the unicorn mouth. Suddenly, the game of analyzing people with their faces hidden became downright entertaining. A man with a beautifully sculpted body and a Ninja Turtles mask seemed so terribly insecure and nervous. He was picking at a hole in his jeans and looking around the room as though the mafia was hunting him as opposed to the potential love of his life. She noticed a bead of sweat meander out of the Raphael mask and make its way down his muscular neck. Or was it Michelangelo? Suddenly, she remembered that Corey Feldman was in that movie, and it made her laugh out loud. Some girl with gorgeous Latina skin, the tone of fantasy beach sand, darted a look over at her random laughter. Her mask was a lovely beaded Dias de los Muertos skull, shimmering and perfectly fitting her beaded black and purple outfit. Just a random funny thought, Taffy explained nervously. The pretty skeleton turned away, back to her friend, who looked just terrible in a scream killer mask. Women always acted so dreadfully to Taffy, even in her harmless, non-threatening Miss Piggy mask. She had selected the mask from the costume shop because it seemed humble and humorous, two qualities she prided herself on possessing. It was classic 1980s frizzy-haired, pink glam Miss Peggy from when she performed with Dolly Parton. It just felt right. Other standout characters in the crowd included a very off-putting Beekman from the little-remembered Beekman's World sitcom on an equally off-putting scrawny man who stood about 7 feet tall. A clearly arrogant woman whose outrageous Jessica Rabbit mask was hardly noticeable in contrast to her massive breast implants. A portly fellow who had a kind energy and a delightful Where the Wild Things Are mask. She could have been mistaken because it had been some time since the carefree days of childhood, but Taffy thought it was the bull-headed character. An obvious egotist in a rubber Ken doll head, his obvious soulmate, whom Ken naturally didn't even notice, in a full Barbie head. She couldn't walk for shit in her outlandishly painful-looking pink heels. There was a bored-looking Catwoman, an already extremely drunk Howard the Duck, an eager Bart Simpson, a clearly horny Snuffleupagus, a Dilbert who looked like he might bolt for the door at any minute, a Clifford the Big Red Dog doing dance moves that did not fit the music, an awesomely badass Xena warrior princess, and a very cheaply made He-Man among other such freaks present. It was obviously going to be an interesting night. The MC also donned a mask just to keep things on theme, and got on the mic to kick off the undeniably weird experiment. He was in a very large T-Rex getup, complete with dinosaur body and tail. "Hey, hey, mystery daters," he began with a few preliminary microphone squeals, fitting of such shenanigans. "It's your pal, Sexy Rex, and I'm here to help you find love, or at the very least someone to take to that next family wedding to get your mom off your ass. So sharpen your teeth, you heart-eating carnivores. So sharpen your teeth, you heart-eating carnivores and shy herbivores. It's time for the No Faces place to get a taste of who could be on this very night crashing at your place." Maybe this wasn't such a grand idea. Taffy was already too deep in to back out now. She was too deep in to back out now. The whole place had filled with ridiculous 80s cartoon faces, superheroes, animals, and horror movie villains. She simply had to see how this all turned out. There were huge folding tables set up in a diamond shape around the bar. Taffy's mind wandered into an imaginary equation of just how many diamond formations of folding tables would be required to seat all the lonely people in New York City. It would likely be a lot of very big diamonds. The tables were covered in shiny fabric like it was prom or something. The centerpieces at each table were various collections of local swag, including condoms, vibrators, gift cards to upscale restaurants, booze, CBD body oils, weed, and other such social lubricants, and would be gifted to lucky raffle ticket holders at the end of the night. "Okay, daters, freaks, and alligators, let's rock this," bellowed their dinosaur leader, pepped by a concoction of uppers, no doubt. "You'll have 7 lucky minutes in heaven with each of your masked dates. At the end of the first round, you can check off 10 people, aliens, or animals you want to spend more time with, one-on-one. Grab one of the lists by the DJ booth." The DJ, for visual storytelling purposes, was wearing a very tall, very lifelike giraffe mask, as naturally as if it were his own head. "If you match up with any of your chosen masked entities, you will qualify for round 2, where you will have a juicy 10 minutes to get to know your mystery dates better. In round 3, you can only choose a top 5 selection, and if you score a lucky connection, maybe you won't be binge-watching Game of Thrones alone again tonight. All right, enough holding tight. Let's get down to it. Ready your engines. Trust the hands of fate, and let's date." The first concealed single before Taffy was a giant banana. He seemed pleasant enough, albeit a bit unmemorable, even with the banana costume. He liked The Legend of Zelda and other such things that Taffy had outgrown in 7th grade. He sniffed quite a lot under the banana suit, and it really got on her nerves by minute 5. By the time the buzzer startled them both, Taffy was certainly ready for the banana to split. Ching. Next up was a very funny Fred Flintstone. He made references to What About Bob, saying, "Look at me, I date now, I'm a dater." Taffy liked his approach, but as the minutes dragged on, she realized he was one of those guys who spoke exclusively in movie quotes. The charm had worn off by the time he had used his 3rd Dumb and Dumber quote in reference to an old girlfriend, saying, "Yeah, I called her up. She gave me a bunch of crap about me not listening to her or something. I don't know, I wasn't really paying attention." At that point, Taffy had tuned him out. She tried hard to pay attention, but as it so happened, he wasn't that invested in her either. Their time together was nearly through, and Taffy was attempting some small talk about her twin sister, Tawny, who was, interestingly enough, an FBI agent, when a buxom woman wearing a Playboy bunny mask and a skin-tight red dress walked slinkily by. Fred Flintstone instantly forgot his manners, rather aggressively gawking at her as she wiggled her way to the restroom. In the spirit of his movie quote obsession, Taffy kept it light, saying, "Were you listening to me, Neo, or were you looking at the woman in the red dress?" He turned back daftly, responding with a, "Huh?" And Taffy could tell that his natural, actual face probably looked just as dense as the Fred face. "Never mind," she said, mirroring a feeling of wanting to surrender and leave the scene. Just then the timer buzzed, and Fred went off to find some simpler lady's bed to rock. Up next, none other than McGruff the Crime Dog. This was starting to feel more and more like Candid Camera. Conversation with him was strained, to say the least. It was like that long, uncomfortable silence in Pulp Fiction, only Taffy didn't have a cherry to suck on in a sexy fashion, and there wasn't even a good milkshake to sip to fill the horrible void. So, Taffy tossed out a desperate line into the cold water of his terrible, disjointed connection. Did you know that the actor who played McGruff at, like, baseball games and events and stuff got a 16-year jail sentence for having, like, copious amounts of weed and tons of ammo and grenade launchers and stuff? Her silent companion spoke. Really? No shit. That's crazy. I found this in my sister's basement. That's gnarly. That's like, ironic. Yeah. The silence was still trying to devour the moment. That's probably like a collector's item. My sister would freak to see that. She's an FBI agent. She loves all things criminal and unsavory. Taffy always found herself defaulting to stories about Tawny, and then she felt instantly angry about it, like her own stories seemed boring in comparison, even to her, and she hated it. Taffy, sister to the FBI agent. Taffy, the wannabe writer who dropped out of NYU because her migraines were so bad. Taffy, the lesser sister with thinner hair and smaller tits. Whoa, her oh-so-eloquent date replied. That's dope. Did she ever do any drug busts? My roommates sold Molly for a while, but then this chick, took some and broke glass in our kitchen and, painted this, witch shit all over, and they kind of took a step back after that. Taffy didn't pray often, but she prayed for the timer to go off. No drug busts to my knowledge, she replied, baffled by the murk of the dating pool. Her sister mostly worked on homicides, but that information was too juicy to share with this idiot. It's really a lot more like paperwork than anything. She put a cap on his curiosity. Oh, right. He seemed disappointed and appeared to look off at the street. Is there going to be snacks? He then inquired. I'm not sure, Taffy said, crawling out of her skin to be through with the longest 7 minutes in history. Finally, the timer saved her, and McGruff the crime dog slobbered off to his dull future, where he'd doubtlessly breed dull children and fuck his wife dully and infrequently. Taffy was so close to giving up. She felt like a rat in an experiment, but there wasn't even any peanut butter or cheese for incentive. Her mind was teetering right on the edge of walking out when Richard Nixon sat down and changed her life forever. His mask was one of the really well done ones with big exaggerated long nose and the rubber slicked back hair helmet. The moment he sat down, he confidently said, "There is no one on the planet that compares with you." Taffy looked stunned, though he couldn't see it on her face. What? She asked, a bit taken aback. Oh, he chuckled a bit. It's a Miss Piggy quote. Only she says moi. You know, no one on the planet that compares with moi. Right, she laughed a little louder than intended. Right, I remember that now. You're good. You don't exclusively communicate in quotes, though, do you? Gosh, he replied with the perfect zest of flirtation. Only if you want me to. Well, she could feel her cheeks blushing under the pig mask. I kinda already had that date tonight with Fred Flintstone. It's like he never spoke to anyone without quoting a movie. Boy, Nixon shook his head. That's a yubba dubba don't. Taffy giggled so hard she almost choked on her water. So, she tried to recover her voice, have you had any real winners tonight in this bizarre pageantry of singledom? Emphasis on the dumb, mostly, he said, feeling more comfortable than he had in ages. I mean, don't get me wrong. It makes for great stories having Barbie ask you why you chose Quagmire from Family Guy and having a female Gene Simmons tell you she's always had kinky dreams about bad presidents. But no, mostly I've been pretty turned off. I guess until now. Taffy was sweating beneath the thick layers of pig. Oh, really? She pressed, practically begging for him to say more deliciously nice things about her. So, you feel a bit of je ne sais quoi for moi? Yes, he admitted. You could definitely say that. So what's your passion, Miss Piggy? Besides frogs and fabulous fashion, of course. I like that, Taffy said, finding herself leaning closer and closer. Most people just ask, what do you do? No one's ever asked me about my passion before. Yeah, Nixon nodded. It's one thing to have a thing in life that you do, like real estate or retail, but I'm more interested in why somebody gets out of bed. That thing rarely correlates with the adult have to do to live and eat thing. That's completely true, Taffy agreed, suddenly panicking about the time ticking. I write. I'm a writer. Actually, that's the first time I've said that confidently without immediately shrinking away as though saying it makes me some kind of arrogant moron in years, maybe. Yeah, I'm a writer. I'm trying to finish this novel about an astronomer who finds himself unable to be sexually aroused by women because he becomes so enamored with celestial beings. But I'm really struggling with the ending because it's like I don't want him to give in to this female scientist who wants him, but I think that's what the readers will want. She so desperately wished she could read his facial expressions. Sorry, it's silly. Like, yeah, another writer in New York City. It's like barnacles on a dang military boat, right? Like, yeah, so original. Why are you apologizing? Nixon asked sweetly. I was just kind of taking in the fact that I finally met someone interesting in this gigantic city full of barnacles. I love the plot of your story, and I can tell you think about it all day, every day, and I love that. Taffy nearly jumped out of her seat when the buzzer broke their beautiful moment. She could feel the panic spreading through her body. This was like the Meet Me in Montauk moment between Joel and Clementine, but with higher stakes, because this wasn't a movie. It was her real, actual, gosh damn life happening now. And she just had to do something before the love of her life, Richard Nixon, slipped away forever. Hey, Nixon made the move instead. This might sound totally bonkers, but do you want to just get out of here? Like, leave together and not look back kind of thing? It's okay if you say no. I mean, there's about 15 clowns, like actual clowns in here who could really sweep you off your... Yes, Taffy practically screamed. She lowered her voice a bit. Yes, please. I'd love nothing more than that. Let's beat this freak stand and not look back. I'll go anywhere with you right now. He took her hand, and without any hesitation they left the noisy room of many Batmans and Jokers, many Marvel characters and few heroes among them. And they were suddenly together on the strangely quiet street. Where to first, Mr. President? Taffy asked, not even trying to hide her obvious swoon. Well, he thought for a moment. First, we need a cab to get anywhere. I'm so hungry. Honestly, I mostly came to this thing because I heard there was going to be food. But when I got there, the bartenders told me no one got food unless they stayed until the bitter end. But I certainly left with something much better than a full stomach. If you could see me, you'd see I'm nothing but blush right now, just as pink as this pig. Speaking of which, Taffy then reached up to pull off her mask, and name still unknown Nixon figure quickly grabbed her arm. Wait, he blurted. I know this sounds strange or creepy or like true crime show or something, but can we maybe do like a silly out there romantic experiment and just keep the masks on a little longer? I mean, everybody in there is still in the test. Maybe we should let it play out too. I just think it's kind of exciting that we only know each other like this. So far, at least. He waited a moment, fearing her reaction. I'm sorry, he said, fidgeting. That's dumb, right? I sound like Fred Flintstone now, don't I? Yeah, that sounds crazy. He reached to remove his own mask. No, Taffy stopped him with her voice. No, I love it. I was just kind of absorbing the fact that I met someone so game for the unknown. I was just in a sort of long moment of disbelief, like, wow, an actual human with unique thoughts. I'm in. Let's do this, Dick. He laughed, and even muffled by the rubber mask, it was one of the sweetest sounds she'd ever heard. Okay, I love it, he clapped joyously. Let's get Dick the best grilled cheese in New York. Sound okay? Pigs love cheese, right? This pig will have whatever you're having, Mr. President, sir, Taffy saluted him. He hailed a cab with remarkable swiftness. Taffy had never seen a cab appear with such cinematic timing. He opened the door for her. He actually opened the fucking door for her. The last recollection she had of a man opening a car door or any door chivalrously like that was the night of her senior prom, and her date, Mooney, was as gay as the ocean is blue. She felt weak at the knees. Their fingers brushed getting into the cab, and it was like that part in It Happened One Night when Claudette Colbert is acting all coy like Clark Gable isn't the super babe that he is, and she's just all unfazed by him, and he's all devil-may-care about her, even though the audience knows the sexual tension is mounting by the millisecond, and they have that little spat about her bag, and she's all huffy and like, I'll do it myself, and puts the bag up and then falls in his lap, and it's like everyone watching is horny already, and he says, next time you drop in, bring your folks. Only it was even steamier than that. They turned their big rubber heads towards each other and laughed at the whole big, beautiful, goofy thing. They were snapped out of their enchantment by the cab driver. Are you headed to a costume party, kids, or are we on our way to rob a bank? Oh, sorry about that, sir, Nixon called to the round-faced, cigar-smoking, fedora-wearing, perfect movie representation of a New York City cabbie. We just came from a very strange initiation. It's a long story. Take us to that bar, please. All right, fella, not this bar, not the other bar, but that bar. That's right, friend, quipped Tricky Dick. That's the one. With that, they were off. The grilled cheese truly was a thing of magic and wonder. Taffy had never tasted anything so mouth-watering, and she'd been in the city almost 9 years. Their conversation was pure ease and linguistic elegance. It was like a dance that they'd both been practicing in the mirror for weeks. Only it wasn't. It was real. Taffy didn't mention her sister once. She couldn't recall ever not using that card on a date. Their chemistry was so undeniable that the patrons, servers, and bartenders didn't even seem to bat an eyelash at their ridiculous masks. Taffy had never really felt closer to anyone, and she didn't even know his name. She asked, "So, is there like a lightning round of trivia where the prize is finding out each other's names or revealing our true faces? Will there be an obstacle course?" He pondered a moment. Well, I guess that all depends. Do you make cute, endearing noises when doing obstacle courses? Because if you do, I'm going to find one of those all-night trampoline places and start coming up with obstacles. The city has everything, right? She smiled, though he couldn't see it. Well, she beamed, it didn't until tonight. Now it has everything. She could tell he liked that answer. I gotta admit one thing, though, she said. I'm very curious about your mask choice. I've just been rolling with it because you're just about the most charming man I've ever encountered. So much so that I'm not sure you're even real under there, but it's, well, it's a bold choice. Honestly, he chuckled a bit, I figured if someone could actually like me in this hideous thing, especially if they knew even the first thing about Nixon or had any kind of association with his face, well, if they could like me beyond that very deeply ingrained disgust, then maybe true love is possible. Well, did you do any fornicating this weekend? Taffy asked bluntly. Say what? Responded a very shocked Dick. She giggled, amused with herself. That's like the first thing that I thought when I saw you. It was this hilarious offhanded quote from Nixon. He just casually asked that of a reporter before an interview once. That, and I thought about his quote, I was not lying. I said things that later on seemed to be untrue. That was a good one. Well, Nixon was very tickled by her. He made the infamous 4 more years gesture, his napkin still stuffed in his sleeve. No one gets to put words in my mouth. I'm the president of this fine country, and I say what's a lie and what isn't, and what I did or didn't say. He busted out laughing, barely finishing the role play. He then became very serious, seemingly out of nowhere. What is it? Taffy asked, concerned. You feeling okay? Yes. Yes, he assured her. Actually, never better in my whole life. The thing is, I don't want this night to end. Me neither, Taffy agreed. I certainly do not want it to end. Yeah, but I mean like ever. Like at this point, he nervously admitted, I cannot honestly imagine ever saying goodnight or goodbye to you. It's really too painful, the thought of that. He hesitated and she held her breath, which was made harder by the mask. He continued, I want to take you to my place. I want that, Taffy blurted, perhaps too enthusiastically, but she didn't care. I so want that. Well, the thing is, Miss Piggy, he looked down, clearly afraid. I'm very nervous for you to meet my family and to see my life, but I need you to. I couldn't possibly just go through with the human niceties and get your number and wait a week like some millennial tool. I need you to see my universe tonight. Will you come with me? She did not hesitate, even with the perplexing and heavy mystery of his words. Yes, she answered. Yes, absolutely. Please, show me this universe of yours. Okay then, he nodded, his big rubber nose flopping a bit. But I just don't know what I'll do if it pushes you away. If you don't understand and you walk away like all the others, I really don't know how I could bear it. But it's worth the risk. Let's go. With that, he grabbed her by the hand, flooding her body with endorphins, and they effortlessly hailed another cab to Manhattan. This cab driver looked as though she had a joke or a folk tale for every situation. She was like everyone's favorite aunt. Her bright 80s countertop pink lipstick seemed to be just about the most colorful thing in the city. She smiled back at the new couple, saying, I remember cavorting around the city like that. Of course, with us, it was all fringe and rhinestones, not rubber masks. But hey, you gotta carve out your own fun in this life. It's going extinct, you know. Fun. Gotta keep it alive. I couldn't agree with you more, ma'am, Nixon chimed, while taking Taffy's hand so naturally it felt like he'd been holding it all her life. Taffy's heartbeat was so intense in the cab, but not like in the past where it made her chest hurt and she had to hide under a blanket all day. More like she was truly and fully alive for the first time ever. She wondered what it would be like to kiss him. She'd never even much cared that much for kissing, but she knew this one would be different. And then, as if in perfect sync with her, Nixon whispered, I cannot wait to know the bliss of kissing you. I can't stop wondering what it will be like. Taffy squeezed his hand harder. Just then, Dolly Parton and Kenny Rogers' classic version of Love is Strange, originally by Mickey and Sylvia, but properly slayed by the country duo, came on. Gosh, I love this song, the cab driver hooted, turning it up full blast. Me too, Nixon and Taffy both replied in perfect unison. They turned their masks toward one another, laughing a full deep laugh. They then sang the entire song together perfectly. By the time they got out of the cab, they were still laughing. That's why I picked this mask, giggled Taffy, because this is the version of Miss Piggy where she dressed up like, they both said in sync, Dolly Parton. Yeah, said Nixon out of breath. I should have given you props for it earlier. Not many people would appreciate such a wonder. Well, here we are. Let's dive in, Piggy dear. Richard's building was intimidating and impressive. It was one of those towering marvels with massive lofts that could fit 50 people. As it turned out, that's about how big Nixon's family was. They entered the massive multi-story loft hand in hand. The walls were covered floor to ceiling in beautiful art. The furniture was so futuristic and unique. It felt kind of like that scene in A Clockwork Orange with the naked lady tables and milk and jivey lingo, but more inviting and less murdery and sinister. Still, it was certainly another world. There were fuzzy swing chairs, little meditation nooks, books upon books upon books, and a kitchen full of fruit baskets containing the most exotic and luscious fruit Taffy had ever seen. Nixon was met with whispered phrases she couldn't decipher, and long, heartfelt embraces from person after person after person. Some of them called him brother, others referred to him only as loved one, but they all acted as if they were reuniting with him after years of absence, not one evening of speed dating. None of them even seemed to notice that he and Taffy were still wearing masks. They simply stared at him in awe as if they were waiting for him to speak. Everyone, he addressed the rather large crowd, this is Miss Piggy. I think I love her. They applauded. They actually applauded at this announcement. He turned to Taffy. I think it's time to remove the masks now. It feels like a good time. We'll get to the names later and all the layers, but let's get out of these sticky prisons, shall we? Taffy was dumbfounded by all of it, but she removed her mask at his suggestion, and it did feel very, very good to be free of it. He followed suit. He was more of a masterpiece than she had been imagining and hoping for all night. His eyes were piercing blue, and his hair was jet black with perfect white streaks throughout it. His cheekbones held up the clouds. His teeth were too good for toothpaste commercials. You are more of a masterpiece than I could have imagined or hoped for all night, he said, literally taking the words from her mind. Did you just? She began to ask him. Yes, darling, I sort of did, he answered without being asked. I sort of took the words from your mind, but I too was thinking the same thought before I borrowed the words to articulate it. Taffy's mouth fell open. What is this place? She asked, unsure if she could even handle the answer. Oh, sweet love, he began, caressing her cheek in a way she'd never actually felt in her lifetime. Welcome to the Temple of Touch. We started this little universe about 10 years ago. People have a lot of misconceptions about us. Just then, one of the very attractive background characters brought Taffy a plush chair made of some kind of furry magic material and set it beneath her as though he instinctively knew she needed to sit down right at that very moment, and she did. People think we're some kind of a sex cult. The cult part doesn't bother us. Terms and definitions and misguided assumptions don't bother us. In fact, we sort of acknowledge that we are kind of a cult. We have a leader. Taffy interjected. Are you? He finished her thought again. The leader? No, my sweet. though I am an integral part of the temple because our leader only speaks verbally to 3 members of the family, and I am one such member. Our leader's name is Center, and she's believed to be several thousands of years old. As I was saying, it doesn't matter to us to be thought of as a cult, but the sex cult part is offensive. The Temple of Touch doesn't focus itself around sex. It gravitates around touch as a sacred expression of the soul. Unlike a lot of fringe spiritual groups, you won't find any abuse of any kind here. If there's even a whisper of non-consensual interaction of any kind, that member is taken before an internal jury, and if they cannot prove themselves to be remorseful or innocent of their accusation, they're forced to leave all of this. It's a steep enough punishment that those incidents almost never come up. People in this modern era confuse loving touch with sex all the time, or believe that they have to be synonymous. I personally haven't had sex in 7 years. My soul hasn't felt ready until now. He smiled with his full being, continuing, I came here addicted to pain pills and misery, and now I teach psychic communication and mental transcendence. Now I'm who I was always meant to be. Taffy told herself not to believe these words. She told herself to use her logical mind and her logical legs and run. But in her soul, in a deep part of herself she hadn't felt since childhood, she believed every word. Just then, her recurring myokemia, I have it and I can't even say it. Her recurring myokemia really started acting up. The persistent and aggressive eye twitching was among her many maladies, and it affected her greatly since she witnessed her mother's suicide. Nixon, who still had no real name, saw the twitching instantly. Perhaps this is the perfect time for you to meet her, he whispered. She will help you. As if on cue, the most radiant woman Taffy had ever seen appeared from behind a large pillar, as if she'd been waiting there the whole time. Her golden hair, streaked with gray, was down to her waist. Her eyes were the color of perfect green apples, and Taffy swore she heard the ocean as she walked, or more accurately, floated towards her. This is Center, Nixon explained. Now would be a good time for your name. Taffy's mouth fell as though it was forming words for the first time. She stammered. Hello, I'm Taffy. She was surprised that she could hear Center without her actually speaking. With her mind, she replied, I've always wanted to meet someone named Taffy, and in all my years, you are the first. You can hear her, can't you? Asked Nixon. Some of the family cannot. It takes years of practice for most, but something told me you would have the knack right away. I'll bet you can hear me too. She looked toward him, and without his mouth moving, she heard him say, My name is Geo. So good to formally meet you, Taffy, love. Taffy was in shock, but something within her knew she was supposed to be there. It was the first time in her existence that she felt home. She looked back at Center with 1,000,001 questions in her mind and in her heart. Without a word, the leader responded, We'll get to all of that curiosity, Taffy. First, make yourself deeply and fully comfortable. Join us for the evening ceremonies, won't you? Taffy nodded, practically hypnotized, as probably everyone was by this otherworldly being. As if in a beautiful dream, the evening unfolded like an orchid opening before her eyes. Her new and only real love, Geo, explained that the family microdosed psychedelic mushrooms nearly every evening, followed by deep meditation and touch communication. Center didn't need to partake in such human portal openers. She had all the power to tap in on any level within her. The facilitator was named Quail, and he opened the doorways of all the participants. All of the no voices within Taffy vanished, and all that remained was yes. She graciously accepted the dragon fruit and mushroom tea presented in the most delicate porcelain teacup. Quail approached her and asked permission to touch her without speaking. She nodded yes. He cupped his giant hands around her face, and she was filled with his memories of whittling wood into tiny animals, fishing, running across bridges, laughing, and camping beneath the stars in a field that she somehow knew to be in Iowa. When she opened her eyes again, Quail was illuminating her face with his love and kindness. He pressed his cheek against her cheek. It was warm and prickly, but still soothing in its roughness. He then leaned in further, giving her a message in her ear softly. You have full permission to find and feel everything. Taffy had never felt so accepted. The ceremony went on like a ballet. Singing bowls chimed their magic. Bells were rung with tones from cosmic places. The air was the perfect temperature. Some family members told her their names. Some laid on giant sheepskin rugs. Some held hands swinging on the ceiling swings. Some cut fresh fruit, while others wove dazzling flowers into other family members' hair. And all of it was perfect. Taffy found her way back to Geo. He gestured his head in a way that she knew was an invitation to lower herself onto his lap. They came together in a sort of yab-yum position. Taffy didn't even know how she knew the phrase yab-yum, but there it was in her mind. She melted into Geo, and he anointed her with deep, pure love. She looked up to the twinkling lights draped across the ceiling. She would later come to find out that the Temple of Touch owned 15 lofts in that same building, and each one was decorated by a different color with lights. The temple found ways to make lots of money and always filtered into good causes. Sure, her friends would say she joined a cult, but she knew it was a true spiritual paradise. As she gazed upward, she saw a face come into view in the skylight. Clear as she was breathing, there was a face. This was the face of God. This nameless God smiled upon her. They were neither male nor female, not fully human and not altogether animal, not perfect, but somehow cloaked in perfection. Taffy had a soul-shaking epiphany in that moment. Opening gateways was a choice, not a gift given to a select few at random. Portals were everywhere, just waiting to be unlocked. Those who knew this were led inside and taken on the ride. 9 months later, I was born. On a snowy New Year's Day, with a whole family waiting to embrace me and teach me, they named me Dolly, and played Dolly Parton records in the Lavender Loft where I was welcomed into the world. All day and played Dolly Parton records in the Lavender Loft where I was welcomed into the world all day. I was encouraged to be exactly who I wanted to be. I became a film critic. My family showered me with encouragement and introduced me to films my friends had never heard of. Growing up in the Temple of Touch made me a better writer, as it had done for my mother, who got on the New York Times bestseller list for her third novel, Left of Center, in which she chronicled her very elite one-on-one training with the leader. My mother taught me everything that Center showed her. Now I have my own children, Seneca, Pine, Breezy, and Dot. I'm glad I didn't emerge into this world through a normal story. I'm glad my parents were married in an apple orchard with 7 flower girls blowing bubbles and not in some chapel wearing white and black and white. On her wedding day, my mother wore a 1960s rainbow gunny sacks dress and about 100 flowers woven into her long braid. My father, Geo, wore a buckskin Robin Hood sort of getup. They danced a maypole dance and bobbed for apples, getting soaking wet, laughing and kissing all day. That's my origin story, and I wouldn't have it any other way. Every year on their anniversary, they pull out their meeting masks and throw a giant masked party. They still do it to this day. I can feel that in your minds and your hearts. You are full of questions. We'll get to all that curiosity. First, make yourself deeply and fully comfortable. Join us for the evening ceremonies, won't you? So there's my crazy tale of wonder and taffy and all kinds of daffy, laffy things. So that's enough for me, Miss Piggy. My battery's gonna die, I think. This was a really long one. I haven't done a super long one in a while. So there it is. Story is a poem, is a story, is a song, is a poem, is a story, is a dream, is a song, is a story. So there was one for you. And what the heck? Do it again tomorrow. See you there.